let's look at how we can turn a piece of this sheet illustration board into a nicely cut and glued cube. There are a few techniques you'll see in the assignment: the miter making a nice, clean, perfect cube, and then the butt joint version having to contend with the edges. Now, I would say if this is new to you, start with the butt joint version. It's a lot easier to control. You just have to kind of follow the measurements in the guide. But if you have a mat cutter or 45-degree bevel cutter or a little bit of experience with this, you can do it with the ruler. You might try doing a miter cube as well, just for practice. And you need several of these, so you can do a couple and use them all around. Now, the first part of this will be laying the cube out on here. You could print a template and trace it onto there, or just kind of cut some pieces and begin to trim them down and use the material to help guide the thickness. I find that a little bit easier because a lot of measuring can get a little bit tedious. What I'm going to do, if it's a 2-inch cube, I'm just going to go ahead and cut a 2-inch strip off of this piece of board. This edge is one that I've trimmed already from a larger sheet, so I can trust that's pretty square. This edge is like a little beat up over here and bent. That is from the edge of the material itself, and I'm not going to trust that one to be as straight. So we'll do this nice simple way. Just go ahead and use our knife to mark a few ticks along there at 2 inches up from the base. And be pretty careful in measuring. And also use these 1/2-inch marks on there for stuff at the edges, but you'll need a ruler anyway for stuff on the interior. Now, this might not be the case for you, but for me, this piece of board is longer than my ruler, so I'll have to take a little bit extra care to make sure we cut nice and straight. I want my ruler on the part of the material that I want to keep in case there's any accident of sliding out. And I want to make sure I have a nice sharp blade ready to go here. Now I'll have to break it off. You can see the other video about that. So I'm going to line up my tick marks very carefully here. I use the blade tick marks because they're just a little bit finer than the pencil, and they don't leave any graphite on this nice white board to get it dirty. Again, I recommend washing your hands before you start, and then as we cut, just pull away from ourselves, or not towards ourselves, and give it like a good even pressure. It should slide nice and cleanly. Make sure you're holding the ruler down very firm, and don't cut all the way to the end because there's more chance for it to move. I'll just kind of make sure I get through the material at least to a little over halfway there. Now I can slide this along and do a little bit of an overlap. Make sure I get this other tick mark, and that should give me a pretty clean cut through. Reposition, make sure my fingers are out of the way. I've got a good hold down. This is a bit of a difficult angle to cut at for me, and if I was moving around and not on video, I'd probably stand up so I could be a little bit more over the top and control my leverage a little more. So find the position that works for you, that doesn't cause any movement to your pieces, lets you cut through without using a lot of pressure. Now you see I can do this like final little bit of a layer cut without the ruler if I want to, but use the ruler until you feel really comfortable with that so you don't mess up your piece of material. I'll go ahead and set that off to the side. And then what I can do is cut several 2-inch pieces in the other direction, or variable pieces in the other direction. But let's start with one that's 2-inch by 2-inch. We're going to do a lot more measuring. If you make yourself a little speed square, that can help this go a lot quicker, so you don't have to do 2 measurements. A speed square would be something similar to this. Is the miter box for cutting, but where you have a lip edge here, so that I could put that, and I can actually use this, right? I can put that here against my material, line it up with that dot right there, and then make sure, since that is square, I could just give myself a secondary tick mark there so I don't have to do quite as much measuring. You can buy these, you can make one yourself. You just need something with a clean, machined 90-degree lip on it. There you go. I wanted that 2-inch piece because if we want to start making the box, not every side can be 2 inches. If they're all 2 inches, then they will not fit together right. So what we'll need to do is consider which ones can have this full-size piece, and I'm thinking I'll do the top and the bottom for the full-size piece, which means the sides will need to be shorter. Let me cut another 2-inch one here so we can see that easier. And you notice I'm doing this all through the model, and that is very feasible if you think through and measure things, but you can also lay it out as a template, and there's a couple provided for you, so you can have it printed in front of you as a guide to help you cut all your pieces and measure, whichever way works for you. Let's go for it. This one may work better for some people who are more kind of materially inclined. The other may work better for people who are more used to kind of construction or step-by-step process. There we go. Got nice 2 exact pieces of board here. All right, so this would be 2 sides of the cube. I'm going to fill in the other space, which means the other side here needs to be this thickness smaller to keep an exact 2-inch by 2-inch cube. One way to do that would be to go ahead and measure a 2-inch segment. And this might be where pencil helps a little bit. This. Never really thought about using this before, but it works all right. But I'm going to double check it because we start to run into some. Okay, looks pretty good. All right, so I can start there and draw a very light line so that I could delete it. Something to see. And I can take these 2 pieces of material and set them right up against that line. You can also measure it, but often these materials are kind of beyond the scope of the ruler a little bit. So actually using the material itself is a pretty accurate way to do it. There we go. And now that's where I want to make my cut. Just for fun, let's see what that measurement comes out to. This material is pretty close to 1/16, but not quite. It's like a little bit over, so that would be hard to keep measuring. It does have 1/32 on it, but I might be getting a little fine. Maybe in metric it would be a little closer. I like this method. So now I have this piece, and I could use this as my guide for measuring all the others. But ideally, if we set this all up, we should be able to see that this is 2 inches all sandwiched together. And my cutting mat has that marking on it, so you can kind of see that there. It looks pretty good. Pretty close, so we can push it up to the ruler. And it's maybe a 64th of an inch off. I'm going to work with that for now. Now I got to make sure we cut the right direction, but it's pretty easy to check because there's going to be a gap there. So we can just use this and help us mark off new measurements. I always use the same side so I get consistency. And I know I'll need 4 of these. And I'll need 4 of these for the 4 sides. Left, right, front, back. They're all going to need their own little modification as well. And nice because you can just line the blade right up. Let's get a little bit more into your view there. You can get a very precise tick mark using the blade. And when you measure twice, there's a lot more chance for inaccuracy. Probably okay here, but if you have a square, or can make a square, that'll really speed up the process and give you more accuracy. Yeah, I can always erase that little bit there, so I'm not too worried about it. Now, one thing you might find as you work with this is that cutting something that's long in a short direction, you might have to put a little less pressure so it doesn't wobble at all, or rotate while you're cutting so you get a clean cut. we go. And so far my blade's holding up well. These are still really crisp, sharp, clean cuts. The more perpendicular you can make them so they're not at an angle, the cleaner it'll go together. There's always going to be a little bit there because of the compression of the paper when you're using the blade. So now I have these four, I can think through it a little bit more. Pretty accurate together. And if these are going to be the four sides, then two of them will have to be shorter in the other direction as well. Otherwise it's going to be a rectangle. So I'll just take any two and make sure I cut them in the right direction. So I'm just using my original 2-inch ones as a template, knock it all together, and so this is the side that's already shorter, and that's the up and down side. And so I want to make sure I cut the left and right side a little bit shorter. And same type of thing, just lay them here so I know they're in this dimension, and then I can use my material to mark off a distance shorter, or since it's the same distance, it's going to be shorter as I was doing before, I could just use one of these other pieces and do my marking like that. And again, notice I'm using the same side to do my marks. So just in case there's a little inaccuracy along that edge, I'm not doing this, I'm bringing it up and using the same one. Hopefully that'll just give me more chances for measuring accuracy. There we go. Something you might not be able to see in the video, but you'll be able to see on your own paper, is the paper has two sides. There's this kind of like rougher, a little bit softer side. That's the drawing surface of this paper, and the side you'll probably want on the outside. And then it has a back, which sometimes will have print on it and other things. It's more pressed, a little bit harder, and a little bit more inconsistent in how it looks. So just be sure you keep that in mind when you move on to assembling the cube, or if you start to make any non-square adjustments, which we'll get to in a second. These should be my final overall trims. And I can do a dry fit to make sure they kind of all go together and make what I expect in terms of a 2-inch by 2-inch by 2-inch cube. And these little pieces you cut off, they can be useful later for glue or extra support. So I like to keep them around. So let's take these and lay them out. If I say start with my bottom piece, which means I want to turn it over, and it'll be right there. And we kind of unfold the box out from there as if we took it and unwrapped it. So then these will be two side pieces opposite from each other. These two will also be two side pieces. They want to line up exactly with the 2-inch piece there, so just make sure it's on the right orientation, not like this. So we're going to have a gap. And then we'll have this top piece as well along that. So these potentially can fold up and over and make the box. Now a way we can test that is with a little tape. And this can also be helpful for gluing, so you don't have to hold everything in place. Just take little bits of tape and start to make these connections. Put that down on the tape, and then I'll just use this as a spacer. Do we need a spacer here? Yes, right, we need a spacer for the material. And those weren't perfectly accurate, so I might want to go on this side. That looks a lot better. Now, keeping these two edges aligned, it can be helpful to have something else there, some kind of jig or guide. Right, so if we put this as a jig or guide here, and you might want to even label some of these. So I know this one's my top. Put that on the back side, not the good side. And then if this is the top while I'm looking at it, let's call this one the front. This would be the bottom, the back, right and the left. They're all face down right now because I've unfolded the box. I'm going to fold it back up. And I just want to put this, there's a little bit of measurement difference, so line up the side that's the best. And again, come back and just use one of my other pieces, smaller, easier to manage, as a spacer. Put that in there. We keep on working our way around. So the bottom piece will be next. And let's see, that looks pretty good. Gonna stuff some new piece of tape. Use some kind of straight edge. It could be a ruler, could be your drafting triangle, could just be another piece of board or material there to make sure everything's in line. Piece of material as the spacer. The spacer just lets me fold the tape up and make sure it glues well. So you can kind of see how that would work if I wanted to fold the top piece. It should fold down in there, and this should fold down in there and make a really nice tight fit there. So that's what this helps us do. And while it might seem like a little bit of work to get started, it saves you a whole lot of time when you're gluing it together because you've already got this tape to help hold it. And you'll get a much cleaner edge, and you're kind of protecting your edges from normal dirt and dust and stuff that happens while you're building models, so they don't get too messy. I'm just doing one chain in this direction, then I'll come back and add those other two on. I think another way I could have done this would be to go around this way and just cap it with the top and the bottom. That might be a little bit cleaner. I'm going to stick with the direction I've chosen, and you can try different ones just to start to think through how things are assembled, because that's a big part of making models and architecture, and is having a good process and workflow to let you do it efficiently and cleanly. Mainly because these next two will be slightly harder to put on in this manner, but let's get it all as one template and see how it goes. This is going to be tricky because we have to kind of line it up right in the middle and be pretty accurate, but I think you can do it by eye pretty well, and it should be perpendicular if we're just pushing it really firm to this material, and any inconsistencies we can make adjustments for as we glue it together. But this is why it would have made a little bit more sense to go around the four sides that have the same dimension and make kind of a hollow box or tube, and then put the two caps on the top and bottom. That's a little bit cleaner method for putting it together, but I think both will work fine. And this is nice because I have a total dry fit capable situation here. I can fold the two sides up, front and my back up, find out where I've made some possible measuring errors. Yeah, just a smidge, it's that 1/64 too small. I could trim, I think I'll trim everything to match it rather than start over for the video, but you want to be careful with your measurements so that they all line up. But here we can see, got a pretty good box going on. So, got my nice dry fit there. There are a couple other things you'll see in the template as far as having a cutoff corner from this piece. And that cutoff corner is on the top there. It could be anywhere, we just have to consider where we want it to end up. But if it's cut off from the top here, it's also going to be cut off from this side and from this side. So let's try to go ahead and do that. It's pretty simple, and we can mark it from the back so it's easier. We're going to cut off 1 inch in both directions. 1 inch. And I'm using the top as a guide because it is already 2 inches by 2 inches. So I can just cut and then use it to help me line up the other two sides where they have slightly different measurements. because they're dealing with the material. And this is a concern, again, when you're building with a butt joint version. If you're doing a miter version, it would all be the same measurement, and so it would be a little bit cleaner. So by putting it all together like that, I can see exactly where that mark's going to need to be, so I can manage how my detail will look here. I want it to cut where that line is perpendicular coming into it, rather than like a little behind it or a little in front of it, what I think will look kind of messy. So let's go ahead and do a little mark there. And since this is 2 inches wide and this is 2 inches wide, so that one's a little bit too wide. That one might be one that needs to be trimmed off, but it'll be easy to do at the end, so that's okay. I can just go with the same measurement all the way across on this one. So if I can find my little mark, it's right there, transfer it around the corner, so I can do it on the back. There we go. I'll get a measurement of it. I might use my 30 seconds part of the ruler because that's going to be more accurate. And it looks like we lose 1/16, which makes sense because that's the thickness of the material we got here. So 1 inch minus 1/16 for this side, and it's going to be a little different on the other side. I've got myself into an conundrum because I cut the wrong one. Whoops. Well, got to remake this piece or turn it around. All right. I still want the back side here, so let's turn it like this. It should still be good. Be careful. Measure twice. Cut once. Pay attention to what you're doing. And, if you mess up, it's okay. It's just chipboard. Just cut a new piece. Or sometimes you get lucky and you can Alright, so that's what we want. Nice clean transition there. And then we can bring this other one up. Make sure we mark the 2 spots along it as well. Transfer them around the side. So this time, I don't have much chance of messing that up in terms of which way I cut, because I have both marks transferred from the material. And that's a big part of this class in terms of starting to get a grapple on geometry, and an interface to it is building the model of this in your head so you make fewer mistakes like that first one I made, because you're kind of thinking through it 3-dimensionally. So working through the problem a few times helps to build up that way of thinking. Oh, that looks pretty good there. And I'll trust this one's probably also good. Yes. So now I'm ready to assemble my box. Let me go ahead and put my knife away, clean things up a little bit in my work area, keep my scrap pile organized. Okay, so we're ready to put this cube together. I've got it laid out for a dry fit. We've done our corner crop. This might be a little different than the template included, but they'll work either way, depending on if you're building up from material or using a printed template guide. We know it all fits together. We've got these material thickness gaps in between each one that are precise to help us fold it up and glue it in place. And I'm going to use some just standard white glue. I have this Gorilla brand, Elmer's glue, Sobo, tacky glue, things like that will work. This tip is a little bit big in terms of getting like a fine bead around. So that's another thing you can use some of this extra scrap for, is kind of painting your glue on or cleaning up places where you get too much. Technique I use a lot is to take kind of a scrap piece and actually just get a little glue out on it. And that glue starts to dry a little bit, gets a little tackier over time, but lets me dab off what I need from there and put it along the edge. Now we got to think about like which edge is this going to glue to. So my top piece always sits outside, so the glue will have to be on this edge here. And A quicker way could be to get a finer attachment for your glue bottle. You can purchase ones, art stores or on Amazon that are more specific for glue applications. Since I won't see much of the inside of this box, so keep in mind that you will, so you might want to erase these markers if you put them on there before you put it all together. If it's your first one, that's okay. All right, so I get a little bit of glue on that edge, and then I fold it into there, make sure it presses good and tight. And the tape will help me out here. You may not be able to do this whole thing at one time, but the glue has a little bit of time to dry, so we can do a couple of folds in this as we go along. You might want a little bit bigger piece of scrap than I'm working on here, but the bottom has a similar glue. That's okay if that happens. Let's just leave our glue there, and we'll fold it all at once in one direction. Having this central nexus around one of the sides that all glues in the same way is very convenient for making the model. I'm running out of glue on this piece. Just be careful not to put that somewhere where you put your arm down on it. And then here, it's going to be the two wider edges that glue to stuff, so we can get, maybe get a little too much glue. Come back with our little stick and clean that up. The tape here will also help when the glue oozes out, that it will stay a little bit off of other things and protect your fingers so you don't get glue on your fingers and then spread glue all over the place. Now, I've got a little too much glue here. Probably want a finer bottle, but I think it will work okay. So be careful not to get it on your hands too much, because then you'll touch stuff on the model and make a mess out of that. Okay, I'm going to be a little bit smarter and start over here. Build it up. Show you that with the camera on the other side. But I got a little extra glue here. Try to very carefully wipe it away. Sometimes it's better just leave it and clean it up after it dries. Once I glue a corner like that in place, I can take a little bit of tape. And here I can just use the tape I've already got. It's got a little corner edge to it. We'll make some fine-tune adjustments once we get them all in place. And this works a little bit better for rolling up our box. Now, this method of folding up the box is very important, not only for this model, but for the drawings that we'll be learning to do soon as well. Oops, you get a little glue on your hands, be careful. I want to fix this edge here, and then make some adjustments around the box. Now, one of the reasons we ask you to use this white exim board is that it picks up all your dirt, which is a bit annoying, but also a good practice for your gluing technique. And I've got a lot of extra glue here. It's still wet. Just come through and try to get as much of it off. Need somewhere to wipe it. And then I'm going to put a little tape around both these edges so that it'll hold them. Maybe I've got enough tackiness there. Let's do a little bit of that. And because we have a hole in here, we can do a little bit of adjustment. Another thing that can help with these is you can use some of these small strips on the inside to align things so they can't go more than their material thickness in. I'll leave that one as an advanced technique for you to play around with. See if you can figure it out. Again, it's just helpful, it's not required. But that's looking pretty good. There, I think all sides are good in place. And I can set that down. And we just want a little bit of weight on it. Let's find something this will work well. And to kind of hold them in place, use some gravity, and give that a few minutes to dry. Always remember to close up your knife when you're done, so you don't actually put your hand on it or something like that. Put your tools kind of clean out of the way, so you have a nice work area, so you don't get glue on anything. Make sure if you did a little glue stick tab thing, is safe and out of the way, so you don't put anything on it. And we'll check back on this cube a little bit later. Good luck. Okay, we gave this 30-40 minutes to dry. Probably don't need that long, but it should be good to remove all the tape carefully so we don't peel anything away, and see if we have to trim up any edges. We'll just pick one and peel it back. Be careful at the edges there. It doesn't come with some paper. And slightly pull away towards the edge. So again, grab the edge and pull it up. And there's a good chance your first cube or two will have some scuffs and some tears, maybe some misalignments in the edges, maybe a little too much glue, things like that. That's okay. Just keep practicing. I'm going to make these a couple of times for this class during the semester, but you're going to get a lot of practice in your studio class as well as techniques. I know there's one thing with this cube where I had some dimension issues that didn't line up quite right. And we'll look at how to fix that really quick. There we go. Peeling there. I'm getting a little peel up on this paper here. Just might not be the best piece of illustration board, and so I might glue it back down or see if we can repair it for a little bit, make it a little cleaner. That might happen. Sometimes it's the material, sometimes it's the way we put it together. Try to get an understanding of which one is which. And there we go. That's pretty good cube. A little extra glue in there. That's where you can come in very carefully without our finger there, but down below we can peel off dry glue pretty easily. You can use a fingernail. There we go. Look for a few spots like that. Clean that up. See, this is my edge that's peeling up, so I might want to glue that back down. I also had a bit of an over measurement there, which is better than an under measurement because we can fix that. A little bit of a misalignment there, but it's pretty close. A little bit there. So something like this, we can actually just use a little bit more blade extension material itself as a guide to trim that off. Right, and actually, that's a nice way to build because you get a really good edge when you do that. So if you can build in some of those overextensions, which spoke to before, kind of building around the sides and then having a cap on the top and the bottom. That can be a little tricky to make sure those are perfectly square, but the tape helps. And then we'll get some very nice clean extensions. But this is a little one here, and it goes around the corner. That might be harder to do without causing more harm than good. But we could try it out. That's not too bad. And you might be wondering, why is any of this important? It's a pretty good box. But the models are something you might hand around. They're a good visual aid in discussing your project. And the craft of them is something we're all going to kind of be looking at, or hopefully not looking at, because we want to focus on what they're communicating other than the attention to detail that you've taken, right? Everyone will be very happy and kind of impressed by nice clean craft, or very distracted and put off by something that just doesn't seem like there's a lot of care involved in it. But that's pretty good little box with a corner cut off. That's what we want to create to start drawing from, and do your best to clean up little edge things here and there. Any repairs you need. You're going to make a few of these. There's some examples of templates to work with, but you can be creative. Just keep it simple. It's not meant to be a super long, complicated exercise. We just need one of these so we can always identify this key block in all of your drawings and then build everything out from there. And this is the one we always start drawing with and kind of position within our composition. Easy to see, and it'll have important factors for us later when we start to look at 3D projections that view it from certain angles and why we might do that. And it's also a nice little block to consider how it can work spatially, maybe provide an entrance, maybe provide a window, do other things. So there you go. It's making your first block. Good luck with that. Be careful, measure twice, cut once, keep your blade really sharp. Mine's getting just a little dull now, but I was able to make this whole box on one blade and have fun.